Hello, third graders. Today, what we're going to do is we are going to start our weaving project. And so, you're going to need some things. And so, you're going to need one of the blue weaving needles. It has quite a large eye. The hole is the eye of the needle. You're going to need a cardboard loom, and you're going to need a skein of yarn. And you'll also need like 3 pieces of tape. All right, so what we're going to put on first is called the warp threads. These are the threads that go up and down. These are the threads that hold everything together. So what you're going to do, and it really doesn't matter what color you have for your warp threads, because if you're weaving correctly, you should be able to push those down and hide those warp threads pretty easily. So you're not going to cut anything off of the skein of loom or anything off of the skein of yarn yet. You're just going to leave that. It's going to be off of the screen. I'm actually going to put mine on the floor because that just kind of helps me wrap it around. So in between the teeth of the loom, the teeth are the little things up here. The notches are the holes in between. So under one notch, I'm going to lay that down, and then I'm just going to tape that down just under one notch. Oh, and I also need a piece of tape for my name. Also put your class code on there just in case. All right, so then what you're going to do is you are going to wrap the weft thread, this yarn, around each tooth from front to back. And when you're pulling, don't pull too tight because then you're going to have a hard time weaving. Don't pull too loose or let it be too loose because then your weaving might kind of fall apart. So I'm just wrapping it around. The front looks like the back. And every couple, just make sure that you can easily get your fingers under that. Don't skip any notches. All right. So, let's see. So, what happens now is I want to end the warp thread on the top. So, if that means that I need to go to the back or to the front, whatever you need to do, I'm going to tape that down, but we just want to end it on the top. Doesn't matter if it's on the front or the back. That's okay that I'm covering up more of those warp threads. Those won't be woven anyway because they're going to be near the top, so don't worry about that. And then I'm just going to cut it off. Just like that. And so now we have our warp threads. This is going to hold our weaving together. All right, so now we're going to start to weave our weft threads. So let me zoom in towards the bottom because that's where we're going to be starting. All right, I'm going to use red for my first color. When you're making this, it's up to you what colors you use. And so when you're weaving or when you're getting your yarn, you want to get about 2 wingspans. So that's your arms spread out way across. So I'm going to do 1 and then 2. Any more than that, then it starts to get very tangled and it can get knotted and it's just not a fun time. So I wouldn't do any more than 2 wingspans. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that yarn through the eye of the needle. And if it's a little frayed, you might have to trim it. And I'm just going to make just one little tie around it, like the first part of tying your shoes around it. All right, now we're going to start weaving. And so some of you have already woven before, and maybe you've just woven on one side. But for the pouch, we are going to weave on both sides. So you always weave in an under-over, over-under pattern, doing the opposite of the row below. Make sure that you look. So let me zoom in a little bit. All right, so I'm gonna start under, over, 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 under. And then I'm going to pull that all the way through to the very end. Leave a little bit hanging off. And push that down. You're going to be pushing these down a lot because if you don't push them down, then you're going to have big holes at the bottom of your pouch. All right, now I'm going to flip it over. Let's see. Over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. Pull that all the way through. And don't have to worry about pulling too tight, so that's nice because the loom gets in the way. So push that down as well. And then I'm going to flip it over again. You're going to be doing lots of flipping in this project. All right, so now that I have a row down, now you need to check every row that you weave. You need to check the bottom row. So where I need to start weaving, the red is under the dark blue, and so I'm going to go over it now because you always do the opposite of the row below. So over, under, over, under, over, under. And make sure you push. This is what we're looking for, this opposite kind of pattern that we're looking for. Flip. Got to check this row. This one's going over, so now I go under. And weaving can be a little tricky at first. It was tricky for me when I was little, but honestly, once you get the hang of it, it's going to come very, very easy. It's just going to take a little bit of practice, like everything in art does. Flip this. All right, now that one is going over. Now I go under. Press that down. All right, let me do one more. Let me show you what it looks like if you do the same pattern. So this one is under. If I do the same pattern, then this is what it looks like. I'm going to show you. So this is what you want to avoid. You see how these two are the same right next to each other? That's bad. That means that it might have a chance of falling apart once we take it off. So you want to make sure that when that happens, you're going to have to, I just like pull my yarn off my needle and then I just backtrack. So then I just pull it off. So make sure you're actively looking for those mistakes. The tighter I push down, the tighter I keep them together, the less you see the warp threads. That's good craftsmanship. All right, so right now what I did was I wove to the end of my string. So to either get more string or start a new color, it's the same thing. So I'm just going to cut that off, leave that little bit kind of hanging. And now I'm just simply going to go get some new yarn and then I'm going to start where I left off. So I'm going to go on the back and then just keep weaving. It's as simple as that. if these start to be too troublesome, if these get in the way, just trim them off. They will be fine. When we tie the warp threads, the pressure from the warp threads from us tying them will keep everything together. So I'm just going to trim those because I'm sick of them getting in my way. All right, so after you have 5 inches of weaving, if you don't know what 5 inches is, put a ruler up to the very bottom of your weaving, not at the tooth of the loom, right at the bottom of your weaving, and see how far you've gotten. If you don't have a ruler, you can just show it to me. That's okay. I know what 5 inches is about to be. So I'm at the 5 inch mark, and now I'm going to start the flap. And so we want to weave 3 inches of flap. So that's going to go up to the 8 inch mark. And so for the flap, all you're going to do is you're going to weave just on one side of the loom. So there's no more flipping it over anymore, because the flap, once we take it off, it'll make more sense, but the flap is going to fold over onto the other side. So you're just going to weave on one side of the loom. So let me show you. So I'm going to zoom in. All right, I got my needle, I got my yarn. And so it's basically like the same thing. You do your opposite pattern of the row below, under, over, over, under. Then you're going to pull all the way through just like normal. Leave a little bit hanging off, push that down nice and tight. And then instead of flipping it over, I'm going to go back. So this one is under, so now I'm going to go over. And I'm going to pull this all the way through. And so this is what you want to watch out for. If you pull and it's like this, it's going to be almost impossible to keep weaving because your warp threads, you don't want them to touch. So immediately when you see them pulling together, immediately pull that back and then push that down. Because if you keep weaving just like that, then we're going to have to cut it off and you'll lose some of the weaving that you did. So make sure that when you're doing that, you don't pull too tight. So like mine right now, if I pull tight, you want to loosen that up right away. So you're going to keep going until the 8 inch mark. All right, now I've woven up to the 8-inch mark. So before we take it off the loom, what we need to do is we need to trim any of those like little schnibbly bits that you have hanging off. Just gonna trim some of those. Make sure it's pressed nice and tight, buried down. Then to take it off the loom, we are going to remove the tape from the front and the back. And then don't take it off just yet. You're going to tie one side at a time. So I'm going to cut across the top of my loom. And I'm going to tie, you want to do a knot. So like the first part of tying your shoes, except twice. That's 1 and then 2. If you have an odd number, just tie it to one that's right next to it that's already tied. That is A-okay. Then flip it over. And these are really long, so don't trim them too short, but just enough so you can tie it easily. So tie those on the back as well. All right, and it's up to you if you want to keep these on there. I kind of like them, so I'm going to keep mine on there. I'm just going to make them the same length. And now it is time to scooch it off the loom. So I'm just going to press it down, scooch, take it off, and then here I have my pouch. And so since I pushed it down, at the bottom, there's hardly any like holes or gaps. So make sure that you push it down. And if you want to include a strap, all you would need to do is just like make like a braid, or you can even have just like a single string. It's up to you. You would just tie it to both sides like this, so it would hang like that. And that's how you make a pouch on a cardboard loom. Thanks for watching.